No Coins Please by Gordon Korman. Chapter 7, No Frills. The much-awaited date with the Rhode Island Reds was a bust. Dennis and Rob, both scrubbed, shining, and drenched in aftershave, went in search of Kathy and Susan to find that the occupants of the red van were in quarantine with chickenpox. Instead of dining and dancing, Dennis and Rob were forced to be content with toast, Pete Ogrenick, and blitzkrieg nagging from Howie for a trip to the local planetarium. Following their stay in Chicago, the junior tours groups were all given 4 days of unscheduled time. It was a good thing, too, because one of Dennis's vagabond driving experiments put the ambulance so far into the middle of nowhere that Rob had to take over the wheel. When he finally managed to locate a known highway, the group had wandered far south into the state of Missouri. Just north of St. Louis, Dennis refused to pass up the opportunity to visit that fine city and rally the support of the campers behind him. The next few days were a blur of amusement parks, sightseeing tours, and souvenir stands as the wayward ambulance cut a joyous path across the United States, several hundred miles south of their prescribed course. Had Rob not been so worried about the schedule, he would have enjoyed himself more. The group was on a roll, and spirits were high. Even Artie had been a model of behavior lately. It was starting to look as if Dennis was right, and Artie had settled down. He'd even bought himself a little souvenir, a 95-cent pamphlet entitled Dairy Farming in Nebraska, a peculiar choice for a memento. But then Artie wasn't your average kid. Still, one could never be too careful. It's not that I don't have faith in you, Artie, Rob commented, somewhere between St. Louis and Kansas City. But just in case you have any plans for some disappearances in the next little while, I'd like to point out that we will be in Ogallala, Nebraska. Do you know what's in Ogallala, Nebraska, Artie? Artie looked politely interested. Nothing, exclaimed Rob, smiling broadly. Nil, naught, zero, zilch. The empty set. Not a sausage. There is absolutely no reason for you to disappear because no matter where you go, you're still in the same place. Nowhere. Not only that, but we're going to be staying away out of town, such as it is. It should be a nice change, said Artie blandly. The day the group was due to check into Ogallala, the van's radiator boiled over, knocking Dennis's tight timetable right into left field. He bounced back, though. With 500 uninterrupted miles of frantic driving through blistering heat to arrive at the trailer park a full 8 minutes before deadline. Hello, everybody, and welcome to beautiful Lake McConaughey. Charlie Butcher smiled benignly down on the entire Junior Tours assembly. Taking a deep breath, he began his yearly spiel. This is our big event, and the old Double J Junior Tours Jamboree. You've all been touring around pretty much on your own, but here's where we all come together. The ones who started out in New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Miami, and you Canadian guys. The next few days we're going to be having sports and games and good old healthy competition. There'll be fishing, boating, and water skiing. There'll be marshmallow roasts and sing-songs. We're all going to be one big happy family. Do you think we look like we've got 6 kids? Rob whispered to Dennis as Butcher raved on. Artie disappeared without a trace an hour after breakfast. Let me get this straight, kid, said the farmer, looking across the kitchen table as the young boy in the tuxedo. You want to rent 6 of my cows? For 3 days, Artie confirmed. Naturally, they'll be stabled with you at night. I'll need them from about 6 to 10 in the morning and 6 to 10 in the evening. One of the farmer's daughters, a girl of 18, brought them each a tall glass of apple cider. Daddy, are you all right? She asked her father, who was looking quite pale. He nodded absently. What are you going to do with 6 cows? Milk them, said Artie. And if you don't mind, I'd prefer 6 high-yield, docile cows. The farmer looked Artie straight in the eye. Each of my cows gives about 2 gallons of milk twice a day. 6 cows gives you 24 gallons. What are you going to do with 24 gallons of milk? Take a bath? Artie smiled. You just leave that to me, sir. Here's my offer. You give me 6 good unmilked cows at the times I need them for the next 3 days, and I'll pay you $500 cash. The farmer's eyes bulged. Where's a little shaver like you going to get $500? In advance, Artie added. making an elaborate show of pulling the key from his pouch and opening his briefcase. He counted out 5 crisp $100 bills. The farmer shook his head. Listen, kid, I'm not an idiot. The only way you can make back $500 on my cows is to sell them, and then where would I be? You'll have to trust me, said Artie. I won't do anything dishonest. How about I send my daughter along to make sure you don't do anything wrong or mistreat my cattle? Certainly, Artie agreed readily. I'm interested to see how you're going to make any money out of this, said the farmer. All right, kid, it's a deal. He shook his head, muttering, I can't believe it. When Artie returned to the group just before supper, he found Rob smug rather than angry. Back so soon? I guess you found out that there isn't very much going on around here. Artie smiled. I guess not. Rob laughed. This is one time that if I asked you what you'd been doing and you said nothing, I'd believe it. Didn't I tell you about Ogallala? I'm not going to ask you where you were because I know you won't tell me. But you'd better believe that if you try to take off one more time, you'll be bound and gagged and thrown under the van until we leave. Is that clear? Artie nodded mildly. That evening, the entire Junior Tourist group held a mammoth bonfire and marshmallow roast on the beach of Lake McConaughey. Butcher was host, moving from party to party, radiating goodwill and bluff charm. It was an act, of course, since Butcher loathed the great outdoors. He didn't even eat marshmallows, having been told by his doctor years ago that he had a choice of giving up either sweets or beer. The party ran long into the night. At 12 o'clock, the campers all went to their tents, but some of the counselors, Dennis and Rob included, stayed out on the beach. In the ambulance tent, the group was getting ready for bed. Would anyone be interested in a little business proposition? The boys lapsed into a shocked silence. Artie Geller was speaking to them. This was the first time on the entire trip that Artie had actually initiated a conversation. Sam was the first to recover. A business proposition? Yes, said Artie. It's a little idea I've been toying with, and I'm going to need some help. You'll be paid, of course. The agent and Sam was aroused. How much? $50 each. The boys were impressed. But Artie, said Sheldon, where are you going to get that kind of money? Dennis and Rob have been paying for you the whole trip. They say you spent all your money in New York. Let me worry about that, said Artie with a smile of quiet confidence. Gee, said Howie, I've never been in business before. What kind of business is it? Artie leaned closer and dropped his voice. Agricultural. There was another shocked silence, so Artie specified, We're in cows. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the 6 members of the ambulance group slipped out of camp, leaving their counselors fast asleep. Overawed, they followed the tuxedo-clad Artie to a remote section of the park where a row of 6 abandoned outdoor changing booths, sadly in need of paint, still stood. These had been in use when the waters of Lake McConaughey were higher. For then they had stood only 50 feet from the beach, but the lake had receded considerably since then, and the booths were now out of the way and forgotten. Sam hefted the van's toolbox and distributed screwdrivers all around, and the boys set to work removing the wooden doors. From the inside pocket of his jacket, Artie produced a sheet of paper and handed it to Nick. These are the painting instructions. You can use the cans of spray paint I've brought along, the ones we got in New York when we painted the name on the van. Make sure you do all the signs exactly the same way. I've got the wording here. You know, said Sam, if we do the signs ourselves, they aren't going to look very good. What we're working on is a no-frills business, Artie explained. Fancy signs would be frills. Now, don't talk to anybody if you're approached. I'll be gone for a while to get our cattle. Howie's eyes grew wide, like saucers. You're bringing cows here? Well, of course. This is a no-frills milk store. And milk that's already out of the cow is a frill. Our customers are going to do it themselves. Angie, the farmer's daughter, who had served the apple cider the previous day, and her 17-year-old sister, Linda, were waiting for Artie with 6 Jersey cows. See, Linda, I told you, a little guy in a tuxedo. She turned to Artie. My dad says we both have to go with you to watch out for the cows. That's fine, said Artie. He motioned back toward the trailer park. Shall we go? The 3 walked along, driving the cows ahead of them. Artie, reticent as always, said nothing. The girls were chatty. Okay, said Angie. The deal's made, so you can tell us now, how are you going to make money from these cows? I'm going to sell the milk, Artie explained. But you won't have $500 worth, put in Linda. Yes, I will. It's a simple matter of reduced quantities and increased prices. Both girls stared at him. And you expect to have customers? Artie just smiled. When they arrived at the campsite, everything was ready. Sam, Nick, Howie, Kevin, and Sheldon were sitting in front of the change booths under an enormous sign which read in crude letters, "No Frills Milk Store. Time sharing program, $1. Per cow minute. No coins, please. BYOB, bring your own bucket. Hours, 7 to 9:30 a.m., 7 to 9:30 p.m. daily." All around the trailer camp, except for the junior tourist section, were smaller signs saying "No Frills Milk Store" with arrows pointing toward the makeshift stalls. Artie glanced at his 5 helpers with approval. As per instructions, each one now sported a white t-shirt with the inscription "Cow Expert" written in black magic marker across the front. "Okay," said Artie. "I need 1 cow per stall, facing the rear." The 2 girls stared. Above each stall was a name. The cows were now Georgette, Babette, Colette, Suzette, Mariette, and Annette. "That was my idea," said Nick proudly. "It's bad luck to have a cow without a name," he added nervously. "It's all right, isn't it, Artie?" Artie nodded. "Okay, man your stations. I think we've got customers coming." "You mean," said Linda incredulously, "that you expect people to pay you $1 to milk a cow for 1 lousy minute? Why, an experienced milker won't get more than a couple of ounces." Artie nodded. "I costed it at 3. The junior tourist people accounted for less than a quarter of the population of the huge state park, so many of the early risers were camping families with young children. True to Artie's plan, the first customers came at precisely 7 o'clock. It was a family consisting of a mother, father, and 3 children. 1 a baby. "Hey now, what's all this about?" the man asked Artie. "It's a No Frills milk store," Artie explained. "Need any milk?" "Okay," said the man. "How much for a quart?" "It varies," Artie replied. "How good a milker are you?" "What?" "Well, if we sold the milk already out of the cow, that would be a frill. In our No Frills time-sharing program, you rent time on one of our quality. Grade A, government-inspected milk cows, and do the milking yourself." The man looked up and read the sign. $1 a minute, huh? That's a pretty good idea. Okay, you're on. He held out $1. "Do you have a bucket?" Artie inquired. "You mean you don't supply buckets?" "Oh, no, sir. That would be a frill." "I'll go bring a pot, Daddy," said the man's little girl excitedly. "Good idea," said her father. "Make sure you get a big one." The girl ran off. By now, a good number of people were circulating around the compound, and a crowd of the curious was gathering around the No Frills milk store. The little girl quickly returned, struggling under the weight of the enormous stew pot. "Here, Daddy." "Okay, kid, here goes." The man entered the stall, placing the pot under a net and sitting down on the small built-in bench. Artie regarded his watch. "Okay, go." The man began milking furiously. Egged on by the cheers of his children and the other spectators, his expression was intense. His hands worked like pistons, and sweat soon covered his body. Artie called time, and the man leaned back, exhausted. Amid great applause from the ever-increasing crowd, he looked down into the pot. A thin film of white milk partially covered the large bottom. "Hey, wait a minute. Where's all the milk?" The crowd broke into laughter, and 6 eager people came forward to Artie with money and buckets, anxious to try their hands. Artie gently coaxed the bewildered man out of the stall, and the 5 cow experts set up the 6 new milkers, 1 per cow. A lineup began to form. "But I didn't even get a thimbleful," explained the first man, still staring with disbelief into a stew pot. "You're welcome to rent more time, sir. Just step to the end of the line, please. We're very busy here." Artie turned back to the stalls. "Okay, go." Now the cheering was tumultuous as the 6 milkers raced furiously against time for their $1's worth. The noise of the crowd attracted so many more people that there was a long lineup and an enormous crowd when Artie finally called time. In Suzette's booth, a woman screamed, "I didn't get any!" She wailed to Sam as he escorted her out to make room for a young boy who was eager to try next. "Never mind, lady," soothed Sam. I didn't do very well my first time either. And look at me now." He thrust his chest out proudly. "I'm a cow expert." "Okay," called Artie, "go." As the cheering began again, and the 6 milkers threw themselves into their work, Angie and Linda approached Artie. "I don't get it," Angie exclaimed. Why would all these people be so willing to pay $1 for 1 minute on a cow? They know they're not getting any milk. Artie shrugged. Country people wouldn't pay it, he said, his eyes never leaving his watch. But these are all city people. City people are the ones who go camping. Country people go to the city for vacations. Well, our father's going to have a fit when we tell him about this, Linda predicted. He might not even believe us. You're going to be rich. Artie smiled. Time, he called. I got more than you, one boy shouted to his sister. No, I got more. Sheldon interjected disappointingly. I think you both got exactly the same amount. How would you know? Sheldon pointed to his shirt. We cow experts can always tell. Move it along, please, Artie urged. Okay, next group. Is everybody ready? Go. So it was that at 8:15 that morning, Dennis and Rob woke up to an empty tent. Oh, no, moaned Rob. The kids are gone. Dennis was calm. Take it easy. There's no place for them to go. You said so yourself. Suddenly the sound of far-away cheering reached Rob's ears. He and Dennis dressed madly and ran across the park in the direction of the commotion. An extraordinary sight met their eyes. At the sight of the old wooden change rooms was a sea of people, hundreds of them, milling around, craning their necks, flailing their arms, and shouting. Great waves of laughter mingled with the cheers. Jutting out from the mob was a long line of people stretching across the compound, all the way to the rows of parked vehicles. Those in the line all seemed to be carrying pots, pans, and pails, and new people were constantly arriving. Dennis stared. What is it? I don't know, said Rob grimly, but I've got a really bad feeling about it. Whatever it is, come on. The two counselors scrambled over to the crowd. Rob elbowed his way to the front. He spied his tuxedo-clad charge, and his jaw dropped. He closed his eyes and opened them again. Yes, Artie was still there at the center of whatever it was, dressed like a head waiter, and obviously in charge. Unable to think of anything to say, Rob concentrated on volume rather than meaning. Artie! I'll handle this, said Sam to Artie. Cow expert, sir. What seems to be the... Oh, hi, Rob. Artie called time, and the cow experts cleared the booths and rushed in the next 6 milkers. Rob stalked over to Artie. Artie Geller, what is this? Pardon me, Rob? Oh, this. This is a no-frills milk store. Yes, I know, I can read, but where do you fit in? Whose store is it? Artie shrugged. Nobody's. Don't give me that. Come away from here this minute. When we get back to the van, you can take off that ridiculous suit. Okay, go, called Artie. To Rob, he added, I can't leave. You can if I pick you up and haul you away. Now move. Hey, bud, came a gruff voice from the line. Get out of here. Can't you see the kids busy? Rob had a brief, giddy vision of Artie's pamphlet, Dairy Farming in Nebraska, and a horrible thought began to ease its way into his mind. His voice became less authoritative and more edgy. This is all a joke, right, Artie? I mean, you and the other kids got together and are doing this for some farmer who's letting you hang around, right? Right? If you say so, Rob. Oh, excuse me. Time. Just then, Dennis arrived on the scene. Well, Rob, what do you think of Artie's no-frills milk store? I think it's all pretty slick, he said proudly. Rob didn't answer. With a sinking heart, he looked at the large box of incoming cash sitting on the ground in front of Artie. So you own all of this? He asked faintly. Oh, no, the cows are rented. Next group, go. The cheering of the crowd around him was making Rob dizzy. But Artie, he blustered, you only had 15 cents. From the line, 2 girls, both junior tours counselors, approached Artie. Excuse me, we saw a kid in New York wearing a tuxedo just like yours, selling attack jelly on the boardwalk at Coney Island. He was about your size, too. Rob stifled a cry of shock. Dennis goggled. Really? Said Artie politely. Yeah, he was making a fortune just like you're doing here. Do you two know each other or something? I work alone, said Artie. Beatrice said she saw another one in Washington, said the second girl, a kid in a tuxedo just like this one. He was making a killing with a racing casino on Capitol Hill. I wonder what the connection is. There must be one. It's a national network, Rob blurted suddenly. If these girls connected Artie with junior tours, he thought desperately the no-frills milk would really hit the fan. Yeah, lots of little kids in tuxedos doing things like this all over the country. Didn't you read the article in Business Week? The girls were wide-eyed. Really? Wow, somebody must be making a lot of money from this. Attack jelly was just brilliant. Brilliant, agreed Rob. Why, we saw one in Pittsburgh, too, didn't we, Dennis? Pop-eyed, Dennis nodded wordlessly. What was that one selling? Asked the first girl. Selling, echoed Rob. Oh yeah, selling. He was selling volcano insurance. Isn't that right, Dennis? Dennis said nothing. Well, it's certainly very impressive, both girls agreed, and returned to their place in line. Rob's face radiated absolute rage. All this time he had been yearning to know what Artie was doing during his disappearances. He had been fatherly, honestly concerned about the boy's welfare, and little Artie had been going into business. Big business. Little Artie was rich, and now little Artie was going to die. Dennis intercepted Rob's lunge. Nevin, are you crazy? He whispered hoarsely. Control yourself. Now, Artie, you know we're very proud of you for all this great stuff you've been doing, but you have to understand why Rob is a little upset. A little upset? The words came out strangled as Rob attempted to shout and whisper at the same time. Dennis, we've got the goods on him. He's been identified selling attack jelly. He turned his eyes heavenward and threw up his arms. What the blazes is attack jelly? Oh, nothing, said Artie. Time. He looked at his counselors, one anxious, the other seething with rage. Rob, Dennis, there's some people I want you to meet. Just let me get this next group started. Ready? He called to his cow experts. Okay, go. He led Rob and Dennis over to the farmer's two daughters. Angie, Linda, I'd like you to meet Dennis and Rob, my counselors. Rob's look of severity began to soften. He glanced at Dennis, whose eyes were glazing over, and searched his mind for an intelligent, urbane remark. It was hi. Both girls smiled warmly. Artie, his attack jelly, his casino, his milk store, and his money began to fade away from the minds of the two counselors. Artie, having set the wheels in motion, returned to business. So, said Dennis, grinning foolishly, how did you get to meet our Artie? We live on a farm near here. He rented the cows from our father. He's an amazing little kid, said Linda. Rob swallowed a sarcastic retort and choked out, Oh, yes, we're very proud of him. He waited for lightning to strike him down. Well, we're going to be hanging around Dennis's tongue twisted, hanging around here for the next 3 days. And with our kids in business, it leaves us kind of at loose ends. Well, we'd be happy to show you around the area, Linda offered. Sure, agreed Rob. He caught a sideways look from Dennis, which seemed to say he had agreed much too enthusiastically for the suave, devil-may-care image Dennis would have liked to project. Well, Dennis wasn't exactly playing hard to get either. Why didn't you stay here for lunch? Dennis suggested. I'm sure Junior Torres can spare a few extra hot dogs, and afterwards maybe we can go to the beach and... Well, said Angie, we're supposed to stay with the cows. They have to be back home by 10. We'll go with you, Rob decided. That is, will help you get the cows home, okay? He added hopefully. Both girls laughed. Okay. They kept talking as Artie and his 5 cow experts processed hundreds of eager milkers just a short distance away. At 9:15, Marietta began to run dry, and at 20 past, Artie closed for the morning. Don't worry, people, he announced to the disappointed customers who had not made it to the front of the line. We open again at 7 tonight. Thank you for your patronage. The next morning, Dennis and Rob were up before the crack of dawn to fetch the cows, and also Angie and Linda. This allowed Artie and the other campers to catch a little extra sleep and enjoy a leisurely breakfast of toast before the opening of the milk store. At 7, they launched into the new day's business with the usual vigor and enthusiasm. Interest in the milk store had not waned. Repeat customers now had their own favorite cows and were eagerly greeted by Artie and the cow experts. Little milking rivalries began to spring up, leading to contests and ultimately side bets. Artie did nothing to discourage this. It was good for business, and his cow experts were always there to provide service for the eager customers. I didn't get any milk. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's cow expert talk. Look at how little I got. You did quite well, ma'am. Take it from me. I'm a cow expert. This cow is defective. Certainly not, sir. Annette is one of our best. Well, you should know. You're the cow expert. Time. By now, Dennis and Rob were spending much of their free time with Angie and Linda. Rob felt an occasional twinge when he thought about Artie. After all, he knew he'd have to confront him sometime. After much confused soul-searching, he decided to wait until the group left Ogallala. When he'd really let Artie have it. In the meantime, at least he knew where Artie was. And the other campers seemed to love being cow experts. And of course, he said to himself, one shouldn't ever supervise 11-year-olds. 11-year-olds were men. Rob's central worry remained the chance that Butcher would get close enough to the milk store to connect it to the ambulance group. In fact, he needn't have worried, since it never would have occurred to Butcher to examine the milk store from close up. To his way of thinking, milk came from sterilized glass bottles, which appeared every other morning by the door of one high-rise apartment. Butcher never bothered with anything that was obviously none of his concern. Roll 9, Exposure 23, Suzette, the most beautiful cow in the world. Roll 9, Exposure 24, Annette, almost as good as Suzette. In between milkings, the group participated under the proud ambulance name in the Junior Tours soccer tournament, but were knocked out in the first round by the Roadhogs. Then they tried their hand at horseshoe pitching, but were disqualified when Nick attempted to steal one of the horseshoes to hang over his bed at home. They fared no better at shuffleboard because Sam, who had a heavy hand, kept heaving the discs clear on the other court, creating chaos, confusion, and sore ankles. By the final day at Lake McConaughey, the group was perfectly attuned to its milk store schedule. Attendance was record-breaking. The words "last day" had been added to the sign, and customers flocked to get their final shot at Georgette, Babette, Colette, Suzette, Mariette, and Annette. Artie and his cow experts were now truly proficient at processing milkers and functioned like a well-oiled machine. I can't believe it, Sam was saying mournfully as the boys ate their toast. Only one more milking to go. Sheldon shook his head. Being a cow expert is, without a doubt, the most wonderful experience of my life. If only Pete could see me now. There's something special about it, all right, said Howie. It's a position of respect, agreed Sam. Cow experts are somebodies. You spend your whole life being told, do this, don't do that, go to bed, get up, do your homework, and suddenly you're right up there with the big shots. Well, said Artie, I think now is a good time to pay your salaries. It's almost hard to believe that we get paid for this, said Howie. Being a cow expert is a privilege. You've earned it, Artie said approvingly. I've got to get a shot of this, exclaimed Kevin, rubbing his hands together with glee. Hold it, stay exactly where you are. I've just got to check my light meter. You know, Artie, said Sam as they posed, I feel kind of guilty about it now, but I've got to admit that at first I thought you were a bit of a creep. No offense. But now that it's obvious what a cool guy you are, this group has no flaws. I know we were good, but now I know we're great. The final engagement of the No Frills milk store was a memorable occasion. The arrival of the cows was greeted with cheers and applause, and the crowd of avid fanatics chanted the animals' names as they were led into their stalls. The farmer himself had come to witness the final milking. His daughters had told him in great detail what was going on, and yet he stood in mute shock watching hundreds of people stand in line for the privilege of paying $1 to milk. Incompetently and awkwardly, one of his cows for 60 seconds. Each milker was cheered on by the rooting of the crowd, and after finishing was met by handshakes, kisses, and pats on the back. The whole thing was pure chaos, and yet hundreds of customers managed to get processed quickly and efficiently. There was genuine sadness when the cows began to run dry, and Artie declared the milk store officially closed. Strangely, no one left. The entire crowd stayed and watched as the cows were led out of their stalls. The farmer approached Artie, and the man and boy shook hands. Kid, began the farmer, racking his brain for the right words, He looked at Artie for a long time, then shook his head and walked away. There was a round of sincere applause as Sam and Nick took down the big sign. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Dennis and Rob were still awake, sitting on the grass in front of their van and talking. This has been a great 3 days, Dennis decided. Angie and Linda are just fantastic. Said Rob. In fact, I don't know if I've ever met two people who have more going for them. They're smart, they're nice, they're friendly. Not to mention great looking. I bet they're better looking than anyone on this tour. The Rhode Island Reds are pretty nice, said Rob reflectively. Dennis made a face. The Rhode Island Reds are men. Angie and Linda blow them right off the map. What's with you, Nevin? We both just had the greatest 3 days of the whole summer, and you look like somebody's died. I'm just thinking that's all, said Rob. About what? Artie. What about him? What about him? How can you say what about him? Dennis, don't you realize that in New York and Washington, while we ran around looking for him, Artie was off making thousands of dollars just like he did here? You know, as soon as we said goodbye to Angie and Linda tonight, I started feeling really strange about this whole thing, and I did a bit of asking around. What he did in New York and Washington is not to be believed. I've seen attack jelly, and let me tell you, Dennis, if you saw it, you'd die. The guys I talked to paid $10 for theirs and thought they were getting a great deal. And the people who were at his casino on Capitol Hill say they've never seen anything like it. Dennis, they felt privileged to lose money to that kid. Dennis shook his head in admiration. He's amazing. I've got a better word for him. Rich. We were so thrilled with Angie and Linda that we didn't think about how much money this kid must have. Now we know why he eats and sleeps with his briefcase. It's crammed full of money. Money in a tuxedo. The only difference between Jesse James and Artie is that Jesse James had a horse. Dennis, do you realize what kind of a mind he must have to think up all these scams? How can we deal with a mind like that? We're just normal guys. Nevin, calm down. You're getting all upset. Of course I'm upset. Think about what would happen if Butcher found out about even 1/10 of all this. Aside from being irrational and immoral, it's probably also illegal. Dennis, one of our kids is a big-time crook, and we didn't even know about it until Nebraska. Shh, Rob, you're shouting. I've got something to shout about. What are we going to do with him? He's not just taking a piece of America home with him. If we don't stop him, he's going to get it all. One of the road hogs poked his head out of his tent. Hey, you, shut up. You're supposed to be an ambulance, not a foghorn. Sorry, mumbled Dennis. Nevin, are you all right? Yeah, Rob muttered, shaking his head. I still can't believe charging $1 for a dribble of milk. Hey, don't worry about it, said Dennis. In the morning, everything will look brighter. We'll talk about it then. As always, Dennis slept the sleep of the untroubled. Rob tossed and turned, unable to get comfortable. Finally, he drifted into an uneasy slumber and uneasy dreams. The world was experiencing a great economic crisis. No one had any more money. Artie had it all. The papers put the blame squarely on Artie's counselors. Rob peeked out of his window to look down on angry demonstrators screaming for the blood of himself and Dennis, and a few were stirring an enormous vat of boiling tar beside a large pile of feathers. Artie, do you have everybody's money? A shrug. Where did you get it all? Nowhere. You two Canadian ambulance guys have really done it this time, thundered Butcher's voice. Better call an ambulance, jeered the road hogs. The demonstrators began to rush the door. Only one man could save the day. Look up in the sky! It's a bird! It's a plane! No, it's Pete Ogrodnick. The world needs its money back, thundered Pete in a booming voice. Taking 3 powerful strides forward, he grasped Artie's bulging attaché case and opened it to the wind. There was a clap of thunder and a flash of lightning, and the green of money filled the air. The demonstrators broke into applause, and the band played Happy Days Are Here Again. Rob cheered himself hoarse. Geez, Rob, quiet down, said Dennis, shaking his partner. You'll wake up the kids.